After some months of intense court cases and arrests, David began to shift his focus to his life with his wife, Mary, who was now expecting their first child. The chaos brought on by Rose and the doctor had started to fade into the past, and David was finally beginning to find peace. One afternoon, as David sat in his living room reading, the doorbell rang. To his surprise, it was Rose's parents and the doctor's wife, Elizabeth. They appeared exhausted and anxious, clearly worn down by months of worry and guilt. They had come with a single purpose: to plead for mercy. Elizabeth spoke first, her voice shaky. "Mr. David, we know we don't deserve your forgiveness, but we are here to ask for it. My husband and Rose made terrible mistakes, and we know what they did was unforgivable, but they have both suffered in prison. We are asking for you to give them a second chance." Rose's parents chimed in, their voices heavy with regret. "Please, Mr. David," they pleaded, "we are not asking for much, just for you to consider allowing their release. Rose is our beloved daughter, and she has learnt her lesson. We promise she won't cause any more trouble for you." David listened in silence, his expression unreadable. He had every reason to refuse their request. The pain and humiliation they had caused him and Mary were still fresh in his mind. But deep down, David wasn't the kind of man who found pleasure in seeing others suffer, no matter their mistakes. After a long pause, David finally spoke. "I'm not sure I can fully forgive what they did," he began, "but I do understand the importance of a second chance. People can change, and sometimes they need the opportunity to show it." He signed, as though the weight of the decision was heavy on his shoulders. "I will agree to help release them from prison, but only if they truly intend to change their ways." Elizabeth and Rose's parents were overwhelmed with gratitude. They promised that both Rose and the doctor would take responsibility for their actions and would not cause any further harm. David nodded slowly, indicating that he was willing to take a step forward, granting them freedom. Although David agreed to show some mercy toward Rose and the doctor, he remained firm in his stance regarding the corrupt judge. Rose's parents and Elizabeth dare not bring up the judge's situation during their meeting with David. They understood that asking for more mercy than what had already been granted would be seen as greedy and disrespectful. They were relieved to have secured a second chance for Rose and the doctor, even if it meant the judge's fate was sealed. After being released from prison, Rose found herself back at her parents' house, which now felt more like a cage than a home. The luxurious life she once enjoyed had collapsed, and the reality of their downfall started to settle in. The grand house she had purchased after receiving the millions of naira from David was gone, seized to cover her legal troubles, leaving her with nothing but the concept of those she once trusted. Rose's mother, who had initially supported her, now looked at her daughter with bitterness. The resentment stemmed from Rose's decision to abandon them when she received the money. Instead of helping her struggling family, she had packed her things and moved out, leaving them behind in their old rundown home. Now with nothing left, she had returned in defeat. The anger in her mother's heart manifested through relentless insults. "You were so quick to leave us when you had money, but look where that greed got you," her mother would say with disdain. "You've brought nothing but shame to this family. You thought you were smarter than everyone, and now look at the mess you've made." Each harsh word cut Rose deeply, bringing her to tears almost every day. She regretted her past actions, but it was too late to change anything. The once confident woman now felt trapped and defeated, and every insult from her mother served as a painful reminder of the consequences of her choices. Despite her sorrow, she lacked the strength to defend herself, feeling that she had no right to, given the pain she has caused. Meanwhile, on the other side of the town, the doctor's life was also in shambles. He had lost everything: his job, his medical practitioning license, his reputation, and now his marriage. His wife, Elizabeth, who had initially stood by him, had grown weary of bearing the burden of caring for him. With his medical license revoked and no income, he had become entirely dependent on her. Their once loving relationship had turned into a source of frustration and resentment. One evening, Elizabeth finally reached a breaking point. "I'm done. I can't do this anymore," she said while packing her bags. "I've carried this weight for too long. You lost everything because of your greed, and now I'm the one paying the price. I'm tired of being responsible for you." The doctor begged for her to stay, but Elizabeth's mind was made up. She walked out of the door, leaving him alone in their tiny apartment, which they could barely afford. Her departure left a gaping void in his life, adding to the loneliness and regret that consumed him. He had gambled everything for money and power, and in the end, he lost it all. With no job and no family, the doctor's thoughts turned darker. He blamed Rose for everything, convinced that if he hadn't gotten involved in her scheme, his life wouldn't have fallen apart. Yet, deep down, he knew he had only himself to blame. His greed had led him down this path, and now he was paying the price. As the days turned into weeks, both Rose and the doctor lived in misery. Rose, tormented by her mother's constant verbal abuse and overwhelmed by her own guilt, struggled to find any peace. Her dreams of wealth and power had transformed into nightmares of shame and regret. The daily bullying from her parents became unbearable. Each day at home felt like an endless onslaught of insults and reminders of her failure. Her mother's sharp words pierced her heart, and her father's silence spoke volumes of his disappointment. Feeling hopeless and tired, Rose made the difficult decision to leave. With nowhere else to turn, she packed a few belongings and chose to move in with the doctor, together with her twins. Despite their shared history of betrayal and manipulation, she saw him as her only option. After all, he was the father of her twins, and despite everything, there remained a twisted connection between them. When she arrived at his small rundown apartment, the doctor was surprised to see her. They hadn't spoken much since the court case, and he still harbored bitterness over her refusal to give him any money. However, seeing her standing there, broken and desperate, he let her in. Life in the doctor's home was far from ideal, but Rose found some relief from the relentless torment she faced at her parents' house. Yet, even in this new setting, old habits quickly resurfaced. Both of them couldn't resist plotting how they could claw their way back into David's life and his money. They both knew it would be a difficult task after everything that had happened, but desperation makes people reckless. Over late-night conversations filled with bitterness and regrets, they devised a plan. They decided that Rose would go to David's house, beg for his forgiveness, and try to regain her old job as his housekeeper. The doctor knew that David still had a soft spot for helping those in need, and they planned to exploit that kindness. Their scheme was simple but risky. If Rose could convince David that she was genuinely sorry and had learned from her mistakes, perhaps he would take pity of her. Once she was back in his house, they would start plotting their next move. This time, they would be more careful and ensure they secured enough money to disappear for good. Rose prepared for one of the most difficult performances of her life. She dressed modestly, making sure to appear humble and remorseful. Standing outside David's mansion, her heart raced. The last time she had been there, she was full of pride, arrogance and greed. Now she had to act like a changed person. She knocked on the door, and when it opened, she was face to face with Mary. The coldness in Mary's eyes sent a shiver down Rose's spine. Mary immediately tensed, ready to shut the door in Rose's face, but Rose quickly spoke. "Please, madam, I know I don't deserve this, but I'm here to ask for forgiveness. I've lost everything, and I just want a chance to make things right. Still filled with anger and suspicion, Mary didn't trust a word Rose said. But before she could respond, David appeared. He looked at Rose with a mix of surprise and weariness. "What are you doing here?" he asked sternly. Rose took a deep breath, forcing herself to appear as pitiful as possible. "I'm here to apologize, sir. I know I made terrible mistakes and I regret everything. I was blinded by greed and I hurt so many people in the process. But now I'm lost with nowhere to go. All I'm asking for is a chance to work and earn an honest living. Please, let me have my job back. I will do anything to prove I've changed." David studied her carefully, struggling to believe that Rose has truly changed. Though she appeared broken, a part of him wanted to help, but he was no fool. He understood that trusting her again could backfire, and he had no intention of letting her anywhere near his family without serious thoughts. Mary, on the other hand, was not as forgiving. "You must be joking if you think we are going to let you back into our lives. After everything you've done, you nearly destroy us. Rose, how do we know if this is not another scheme of yours?" Tears streamed down Rose's face as she tried to appeal to their emotions. "I have nothing left, madam. No money, no home, no pride. I'm begging you, give me one last chance. I just want to work and survive, even if it is for the sake of my twins, so I can take care of them." David, despite his better judgments, felt a twinge of sympathy. "I'll think about it," he said, "and let you know my decision later." Rose left the house, maintaining her acting until she was out of sight. Back at the doctor's place, she recounted the events. The doctor smirked, pleased with her performance, but they both knew the hardest part was still ahead. They were taking a risky gamble, and if they weren't careful, it could all end in disaster. A few days later, Rose's phone rang. It was David. Her heart raced as she answered, hoping her plan had worked. David's voice was calm but firm. "Rose, I've thought about what you said. I can't give you your old job back. There is too much damage and I have to protect my family. But if you truly need assistance, I'm willing to give you some money to help you start a small business. Something to get you back on your feet." Rose felt a surge of anger rise within her. This was not what she desired. A small business held no appeal for her. She wanted power, wealth, and control over David's life. Yet, she knew better than to reveal her frustration. So, she forced out a polite "Thank you, sir," and ended the call. When the doctor returned home that evening, he immediately noticed Rose's sore mood. "What is wrong? Did David call?" "Yes," Rose replied bitterly. "He said he wouldn't give me my job back. Instead, he's offering to help me start a small business. Can you believe that? That's not what I want. I need to be close to him in his house so we can find a way to take what is ours." The doctor's face twisted with a cunning smile. "Well, if being close to David is what you want, then we need stronger tactics. Since we have tried our physical ability and it did not work, let's go spiritual. There is a native doctor I know in a village not far from here. He's known for powerful charms that can do exactly what we need. If we get the right charm, David won't be able to resist you. He will push Mary out of the house and make you his woman, either as his girlfriend or even as a wife." Rose's eyes lit up with interest. "Will it really work?" she asked, feeling a glimmer of hope. "Trust me," the doctor said confidently. "This man have done wonders for people who were desperate just like us. All we need to do is go there and tell him exactly what we want without wasting any time." Determined, Rose decided to visit the native doctor early the next morning. She took a bus to the village the doctor had mentioned. The journey was long and exhausting, but she was fueled by her determination to achieve her goals. She couldn't let this chance slip away. Upon arriving in the villagers directed her to a small hidden hut deep in the forest. The atmosphere around the hut was airy, filled with the sound of distant drums and the scent of burning herbs. Rose felt a shiver of fear but pushed it aside. She was ready to do whatever it took. The native doctor was an old man with piercing eyes that seemed to see straight into Rose's soul. He welcomed her with a knowing smile, as if he already knew the reason for her visit. Rose nervously explained her situation, carefully choosing her words to describe exactly what she wanted. She wanted David to fall under her spell, to see her as the perfect woman, and to push Mary out of his life for good. The native doctor listened in silence, nodding occasionally. After she finished, he spoke in a deep, raspy voice. "You have come to the right place. I can give you what you seek, but know that such power comes at a price. You must follow my instructions exactly, and you must be prepared to deal with the consequences." Eager to proceed, Rose quickly agreed. "I'll do anything, whatever it takes," she said. The native doctor then went to the back of his aunt and returned with a small black bag filled with strange-looking items. He handed the bag to Rose and began to explain how the charm worked. "Every night before you sleep, sprinkle this powder in front of your door and say David's name 3 times. After that, burn this incense and imagine David coming to you, leaving his wife behind. Do this for 7 nights straight and you will see the results." He paused, looking at her intently. "Remember, if you break the instructions or use the charm with any doubt in your heart, it will backfire. You must be fully committed." Rose nodded eagerly, clutching the bag tightly as she left the village with a renewed sense of purpose. She was confident that once she used the charm, David would be hers. All the suffering she had endured would finally paid off, and she would achieve the life she had always dreamed of, living in David's mansion, taking Mary's place, and controlling everything. As she returned home, her mind raced with plans. She could already picture David by her side, showering her with the wealth and status she craved. All she needed to do now was to follow the native doctor's instructions carefully and wait for the magic to take effect. Rose followed the native doctor's instruction to the letter. Each night, she sprinkled the powder in front of her door, muttered David's name 3 times, and burned the incense as instructed. She focused all her thoughts on making David's heart, envisioning him leaving Mary and coming to her with open arms. By the 7th night, she was filled with anticipation, eager to see if the charm had worked. On the morning of the 8th day, Ruth's phone rang. When she saw that it was David calling, her heart skipped a beat. She quickly answered, trying to keep her voice steady. "Hello, sir," she said, hoping she didn't sound too eager. David's voice came through calm and straightforward. "Rose, I've been thinking about everything, and I've decided to give you your job back. You can start next week." Rose could hardly believe what she was hearing. The charm had worked. A rush of excitement and satisfaction coursed through her. "Thank you, sir," she replied, pretending to be modest, though inside she was grinning from ear to ear. "I really appreciate this chance to make things right." After hanging up, Rose felt a surge of power. She had done it. She was back in David's life. This was the first step toward getting everything she wanted. With her job restored, she could have easy access to David's home and could begin working on the next part of her plan, slowly pushing Mary out of the picture. Rose wasted no time preparing for her return. She went shopping, buying new clothes and accessories to present herself as polished and appealing as possible. She wanted to show David that she was the perfect woman for him, better than Mary in every way. She even practiced acting sweet and humble, knowing it would help her win over David's defenses. The doctor, noticing Rose's happiness, asked her what had happened. When she told him that David had called to give her back her job, he was both impressed and concerned. "So the charm really worked?" he said, rubbing his chin thoughtfully. "This could be our big chance. Once you are close to David again, we need to think about how to get more money out of him. Maybe we can convince him to make bigger investments that we can control." Rose nodded in agreement. "Exactly. But we have to move carefully. I can't risk losing his trust too quickly." First, I'll focus on making him see me as someone he needs in his life, someone better than his wife. The doctor smirked slightly. You are being clever, Rose. Just remember, you can't let your feelings cloud your judgments. Stick to the plan, and soon we'll both be living the life we desire. Rose felt more confident than ever. The charm had given her a boost, and she was determined to fully seize this opportunity. As the days went by, she meticulously practiced how she would act when she resumed to work at David's house. She understood that patience and strategy were essential. Winning over David wasn't merely about being pleasant. It was about making him view Mary as a burden and herself as the ideal partner. When the day finally arrived for Rose to resume her position, she walked into David's house with a composed and polite demeanor. Mary cast her a weary glance, but Rose greeted her with false warmth, pretending there was no hard feelings. Inside, however, Rose was already devising her next strategy. She intended to get close to David, make him reliant on her, and gradually create a rift between him and Mary. As she went about her duties, Rose ensured that she was particularly attentive to David's needs, always ready with a smile and a kind word. She even started subtly pointing out Mary's flaws, making it seem as if she were merely trying to be helpful. Whenever Mary made a small mistake, Rose would mention it to David in a concerned tone, planting seed of doubt in his mind. Meanwhile, Mary couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. She noticed David seemed less attentive and more distracted whenever Rose was around, but she couldn't pinpoint exactly what was happening. That was precisely what Rose wanted. Mary, confused and frustrated, Rose slowly pushing her out of David's heart. Days turned into weeks, and Rose could see the changes. David was gradually warming up to her, and her influence over him grew stronger. She played her cards carefully, always appearing loyal and caring when he was around. Before long, David started giving Rose large sum of money, supposedly to help with her twins' education and other expenses. He was doing so behind Mary's back because he knew she would never approve. Rose, feeling victorious, took the money without hesitation. He even convinced David to give the doctor a generous amount to start a business, as if rewarding him for his role in their twisted scheme. David justified these actions by telling himself he was merely helping Rose's kids and a friend in need. Mary began to notice David's behavior changing drastically. His once warm and loving attitude was now cold and indifferent. Whenever she brought up a concern about how much he was spending on Rose, David dismissed her angrily. If you can't stand me helping people, maybe you should pack your things and leave. He snapped one day. The harshness in his voice left Mary stunned. Mary, heavily pregnant, felt the weight of David's words crushed her. She had sacrificed so much for their marriage, including her job. Ironically, it was David who had insisted she stop working to focus on building their family. But now, when she asked him for money, even for basic needs like antenatal care, he refused. Why don't you go and work for it? He said coldly. Mary couldn't believe this was the same man who once begged her to stay home and be a devoted wife. There were nights she cried herself to sleep, clutching her pregnant belly, praying for things to get better. The man who once showered her with love now treated her like an outsider in her own home. When she asked for money for hospital visits, David gave excuses or accused her of being a burden. His words cut deep, leaving Mary feeling worthless and isolated. Hello, beautiful people. If you are still watching up to this moment, please turn on that notification bell because the last part is going to be dropping very soon and you don't want to miss it. It's about to be a blast. Please share this video to your family and your friends, and I will see you in the final part. Before then, tell me if you love the story in the comment section. I will see you in the final part. Bye for now.